Hey guys, Comic Boom here to review Mr. Miracle #1, and very soon Mr. Miracle 2 is already going to be out, but I just wanted to make some quick points about Mr. Miracle #1. It's a fantastic series, and it has to do with a guy by the name of Scott Free, who was raised on Apocalypse by Darkseid. And just a little bit of background, Scott Free is, his father is the High Father, and way back thousands of years ago, in an origin that was very well illustrated in Darkseid War. If you pick up the Darkseid War series, that was Justice League series written by Jeff Johns, he does a good job sort of summarizing it. Basically, thousands and hundreds of thousands of years ago, there's the great war between Apocalypse, the leader of Apocalypse, Darkseid, and High Father of New Genesis. And Darkseid is always about the anti-life equation. He wants to obtain the anti-life equation, use it against all of existence, and create misery and control everything. Well, there's a High Father of New Genesis. He's the good guy, and him and all the new gods are always constantly fighting the hordes of Apocalypse. And in an attempt to create peace between them, a character called Metron suggested that they exchange offspring. They exchange sons. So High Father's son, Scott Free, otherwise known as Mr. Miracle, was exchanged for Darkseid's son, who was Orion, and they switched. So Orion was raised by High Father, and Mr. Miracle, who was a nice little kid, innocent kid, he's raised on Apocalypse. And of course, it's a horrific life on Apocalypse, and he eventually learns to escape Apocalypse. And of course, that's one of the reasons why he's known as the greatest escape artist who ever is, because he's Mr. Miracle. Because if you can escape the darkness of the Apocalypse, you can escape anything. And what makes this very interesting in Mr. Miracle is that Tom King, who is of course known for his great work on Omega Man, also for his great work on Marvel's The Vision, what he does here is that he suggests very strongly in the opening issue that Mr. Miracle is gonna have to try to escape the anti-life equation. And it starts off that the issue is just brilliantly artistically rendered. This is probably one of the best combinations of artist and writer in a very long time, because right away it starts off with Scott Free. Everything looks a little bit blurry. In fact, often throughout the entire book, there's every single picture, every single page has sort of a blur to it, and in between various panels is the darkness of Darkseid and it's suggested very strongly that Mr. Miracle, Scott, is recovering from a suicide attempt. Now, why would he do that? I want to talk about a little bit about the anti-life equation, because it's not directly mentioned here, but well, it is referenced by High Father. High Father visits Scott and tells him that Darkseid, they've managed to get a hold of the anti-life equation, and he asks Mr. Miracle and his wife, Big Barda, to come back to New Genesis, because they're going to engage in battle with Darkseid, because he's finally managed to obtain the anti-life equation. Now, what is the anti-life equation? Well, the reason why I think that the anti-life equation has already been used on Scott Free throughout this whole issue is that his entire perception of reality has been compromised, and it's obvious right from the beginning of this issue. I also think that it's that the anti-life equation is responsible for Scott Free's delusions and ultimately his suicide attempt, if in fact any of that is real. Because you got to remember what the anti-life equation is, and I'll just set it up here for you guys. The anti-life equation is, you take loneliness, you add loneliness plus alienation plus fear plus despair, divided by your lack of self-worth, mockery, condemnation, and misunderstanding. You multiply that by guilt, shame, failure, and judgment, and you've got the anti-life equation. That's what it is. Hope equals folly. Life equals death. Love equals lies. The self, yourself, is dark. It's the dark side. And therefore, Darkseid is. And that's essentially the that's probably an emotional way of describing what the anti-life equation is. The anti-life equation is essentially, once you find it, it is a mathematical certainty that life is hopeless. So it's beyond emotion. It's science. And it's science overcoming everything, and it's destroying your life. Now, this was explored in Final Crisis, Grant Morrison's Final Crisis, where Darkseid obtained the anti-life equation, used it on the heroes of the DC universe, and essentially decimated it. And Darkseid is so powerful with the anti-life equation that it took literally a radium bullet, because only radium bullets can kill gods. It took Darkseid being shot with a radium bullet, as well as being attacked by the Black Racer, who normally just kills flashes. And it also took the combined efforts of Superman and numerous others, all the multiverse, to destroy Darkseid in Final Crisis. Final Crisis is somewhat of a confusing read. It's got mixed reviews, but it's a really great concept. So if you can muddle through it, it's actually pretty cool. But in any event, this is what Mr. Miracle is addressing now. This is what Scott Free has to address right now. And what's very interesting here is that throughout this issue of Mr. Miracle, it's clear that Scott is trying to see reality, but he's misperceiving it. At one time, in one particular scene, he makes a comment that Barda's eyes have changed, that his wife's eyes have changed color. He makes a comment to her that your eyes aren't blue anymore. How come your eyes aren't blue anymore? And she says, Scott, my eyes are brown. They've always been brown. And she thinks that maybe Orion hit him a little bit too hard, because at the beginning of the issue, Orion shows up and kind of like he hits Scott a couple times, Mr. Miracle a couple times, because he's angry that Scott tried to kill himself. Like, what are you doing? And it was his way, I think, of expressing some sort of crazy half-brother affection, I suppose. I don't know. Or stepbrother affection. But in any event, Barda tells him, my eyes have always been brown. They've never been blue. Now, what's interesting about that, if you go into DC history, Big Barda's eyes have in fact been blue. The DC Comics Encyclopedia, I've looked this up, page 43 of the DC Comics Encyclopedia, describes Big Barda's eyes as being the color blue. And I'll put it on the screen for you. But now Big Barda's insisting that her eyes have always been brown. Well, here's the thing. In Darkseid War, Big Barda's eyes are brown. So at different times in the past, Big Barda's eyes have been brown. They've also been noted as being specifically blue. They were blue as when they were drawn by Jack Kirby. But they were brown when in the stories told by Jeff Johns. So I don't know what the truth is. So that's the crazy thing. So maybe Big Barda is alive. Maybe she does have blue eyes and she's just saying she's got brown. Maybe Scott is seeing Mr. Miracle has already been possessed by the anti-life equation, and the reference to the eye color might be there deliberately planted to throw us readers off and to sort of plant the idea that, something isn't right here. Maybe Big Barda is who she says she is, but maybe she's just a figment of his imagination. Maybe this is all going on in Mr. Miracle's head. We don't know, but it's really cool and it's really interesting as this story progresses. The other thing, that he appears to be hallucinating and seeing dead people. At one point in the story, he thought he was talking to Oberon, and in fact, to us readers, he was talking to Oberon, and Oberon tells him the story that was told at the beginning of the comic, where young Scott Free is in school, and he recites a tale where the teacher made some comment about him drawing God, and that he couldn't know what God would look like, and Scott made the comment, well, now everybody does because I just drew it. It's kind of a cliche story that's gone around the internet as a meme for many years, but it's used in here, I think, just to illustrate that in Scott's mind, in Mr. Miracle's mind, he's recalling things he did as a child, and he remembers drawing what he perceived as God as a child, and he was raised by Darkseid. And if he has a memory, if he's recollecting and having a hallucination or an image, and Darkseid is a god, so maybe he's thinking of Darkseid, maybe he's already possessed by the anti-life equation. We don't know, but he recalls Oberon. He has a hallucination of talking to Oberon, and Oberon is apparently dead, and Oberon tells him the same story. And Oberon is more reflective of the good side, because Highfather is also a god. So there's Darkseid and Highfather, and there seems to be conflicting stories going on here. So we don't know what's going on. Is he possessed by the anti-life equation? Is this all taking place in his mind? What's going on? This is so excellently, so well drawn. And then of course we got the character of Godfrey. He's a talk show host like David Letterman. And Godfrey he's the PR department for Darkseid. He's always been known that. In the old DC series called Legends, Godfrey was sort of used by Darkseid to try to change public opinion against the heroes. And that's what that whole Legend series was about. It was trying to manipulate the public against the heroes by making them look really bad as a way of trying to poisoning their minds. So back in the Legends series, even though Darkseid never had the anti-life equation to influence public opinion, he used Gordon Godfrey as a way to manipulate him. He's interviewing Mr. Miracle, and Mr. Miracle makes a point to him that the reason why, he suggests to him that the reason why he tried to kill himself was that he was trying to escape death, so that if he could die and then come back to life, that's the implication. But that's kind of crazy. And again, as the comic book progresses and all the various scenes, as the comic book progresses, the panel that says Darkseid is becomes more and more prevalent. And so when you have that 9 panels a page and you see, it's almost like checkerboards, you know, more and more the darkness is creeping in on Mr. Miracle's perception, on his reality, until finally at the very end, all you have is one blank screen. The whole page is Darkseid is. So you gotta wonder, is he now possessed by Darkseid? What's going on? And that's the opening issue. This is just the opening issue. So this is really good. Talk about whetting the appetite. Guys, this is really good. I strongly encourage you to pick up Mr. Miracle #1. I'm just gonna leave it like that, guys. If there's other things that I missed, that I know there has, because I've seen some other videos on YouTube. I love watching other guys' YouTube videos on Mr. Miracle. Just great stuff. Guys, check out Mr. Miracle. I will talk to you later when #2 comes out. In the meantime, Comic Boom, out.